the Women's World Cup 2023 group stage is complete. And what a group stage it has been. Honestly, this has been the best Women's World Cup I have ever seen. When FIFA expanded the tournament from 24 to 32 teams, a lot of people were really skeptical, thinking you might see a lot of bad blowouts and also some terrible games between what are basically just amateur teams. And that fear was legitimate. Remember, in 2019, the United States beat Thailand 13-0 on their opening day. That Thailand team did not really belong in the World Cup. But what we've seen from all the debutants and all the teams involved is there really is something here. The women's game has grown and is now far more competitive. And when you look at the teams that have advanced and those that are out, it tells you a lot. So to review the group stage, I'm going to make two videos. So in this first video, we're just going to talk about some interesting stats that I kept up on during the course of the tournament. Own goals, hat tricks, the golden boot race, penalties, corners, goals from headers, because there have been a lot, long-range goals, and then goals conceded. In my second video, I'll do a best of the group stage. Just keep an eye out for that when it drops. All right, so let's get into these stats. First of all, in the group stage, there were 48 games played. There were also 126 goals, which is a good amount. So let's kind of parse down how a lot of them were scored. First, own goals. Now, there were 6 in total. Morocco actually were responsible for 2 of them in the same game. That was their 6-0 loss to Germany. Man, that's poetic at this point, isn't it? Another interesting own goal, Italy's Benedetta Orsi was the only one to actually score from outside her own penalty area with an errant back pass in a very important moment in the match against South Africa. All right, a more positive goal-scoring stat. Hat tricks. We've had 3 hat tricks of goals and then 1 hat trick of assists as well. Lauren James is responsible for the 3 assists in 1 match against China, but the 3 players who got themselves a triple are Ari Borges of Brazil, Khadija Diani of France, and Sophie Romenhaug of Norway. Ari Borges got her hat trick on her debut in the World Cup against Panama. She also had a spectacular assist in that match as well. Brazil won 4-0 in that game, were cruising, and she looked like a real player to watch. But now Brazil are out, and Ari Borges cannot add to her tally. The other 2 players are actually still in the tournament. Khadija Diani of France is a beast. She scores goals all the time, no matter what competition she's in. And after the first 2 matches, she had an assist, but no goals yet. So in France's 6-3 demolition of Panama, she scored the first goal with a really tight, clever finish in the box after trying to do a back flick. And then she scored 2 penalties, putting the ball in the same spot both times. That's really good confidence for her as France goes into the knockout stage. And then Sophie Romenhaug. A total unknown quantity for a lot of people. She plays for Roma in the Italian Serie A, and I'm sure she did not expect to start very many times in this World Cup. But because of Ada Hegerberg's form or attitude, or I'm not really sure what, Romenhaug was given the chance, and she's taken it. Norway were desperate for a win and for goals, and when they beat the Philippines 6-0, she put 3 up on the board and has really made a case for herself to continue to start as Norway go into the knockout rounds. And the question is, are they better with Romenhaug or Ada Hegerberg? You would never have thought this question would actually happen, but now it's a real thing considering she has 3 and Hegerberg is still sitting on no goals. So speaking of goals, let's move on to the Golden Boot race. Top of the leaderboard with 4 goals is Germany's Alexandra Popp and Japan's Hinata Miyazawa. Now Miyazawa is still involved because Japan are in the competition and they have been flying. But Alexandra Popp is out, which is unfortunate for her because she did everything she could to keep Germany in this tournament. So those are the ones with 4 goals. Now let's move to those with 3. We have Lauren James, Khadija Diani, and Sophie Romenhaug, of course, for their hat tricks. The Netherlands' Jill Roord, and Sweden's Amanda Illestedt. Also, Ari Borges obviously has 3 goals, but she is also out of the tournament, and we'll see who ends up with the Golden Boot. Or if someone who's got 2 goals can start creeping into the equation into the knockout round. Let's move on to penalties. So the penalty record at the beginning was concerning. I made a video about it because after 6 penalties taken, only 2 had been scored in the opening few games. That was Steph Catley in Australia's 1-0 victory over Republic of Ireland, and Ramona Bachmann of Switzerland, who scored her penalty against the Philippines. So first, we had Ria Percival of New Zealand miss a penalty, but it didn't matter because New Zealand ended up beating Norway in that match anyway. We saw Christine Sinclair, who was vying to be the only player to score in 6 World Cups, men or women, and she had her effort saved. Then we had Spain's Jenny Hermoso, who missed a penalty when Spain were already up 3-0 against Costa Rica, so that didn't really matter. And then another player you would have bet on scoring was Alex Morgan, who missed against Vietnam. And by the way, has yet to get on the board at this World Cup. Pretty concerning for her. So at this point, 6 penalties had been taken, only 2 had been scored. And it almost got worse that very match day. Japan's Riko Yuki and England's Georgia Stanway both actually missed their penalties, but because of the goalkeeper's encroachment, they were able to retake them and actually score. So we were on the brink of seeing the Women's World Cup at 2 for 8 in terms of converted penalties after just a few days. But once those started scoring, they didn't miss again until the very last match of the group stage. Morocco's Ghislaine Shebak, her shot was saved by Colombian goalkeeper Catalina Perez, but eventually was bundled home by Anissa Lamari. So in all, we've had 22 penalty kicks awarded, 17 have been scored, 5 have been missed. That's actually a pretty good record. But it's going to get real interesting once we start seeing shootouts. All right, let's move on to corner kicks. So there have been 458, which sounds like a lot. Maybe, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. And actually, there have been 21 goals from corners so far. 13 of them were headers. Of the other 8, 1 was an own goal from Morocco. 1 was actually an Olympico from Republic of Ireland's Katie McCabe. But one thing that's interesting that I've noticed in this World Cup is the amount of crosses, the amount of set pieces that are just put into the box for players to fight for with their heads. Now, it seems a little dangerous and reckless. Sometimes it does look that way. But overall, it seems to have worked. So let's move on to header goals. So I mentioned that 13 of the corners were header goals, which accounts for actually 29 of the headers that have been scored so far in the tournament. Now, I know the group stage was smaller in 2015 and 2019, but just to give you some context of the numbers here. In 2015, the entire tournament, there were 23 headed goals. In 2019, there were 27 overall. We've already passed that with 29, and we're just exiting the group stage. Again, as I said, there are more games in this group stage because there are more teams, but we've surpassed what those previous tournaments did in total. And like I said, when you look at the games, it does make sense. There is a real emphasis on getting the ball wide and crossing it in, and almost every set piece is a ball lumped into the box. So Alexandra Popp and Amanda Illestedt are the header queens at this point. Both have 3 header goals to their names, the most of anyone in this tournament. As I said, Alex Popp is out. She is phenomenal in the air. She's like Cristiano Ronaldo. You can just bet on her scoring. Amanda Illestedt is part of a Sweden team who has very dangerous corner kick routines, and she just seems to score the same goal over and over. But those are goals from right inside the box. Let's talk about the more interesting ones, the ones from long range. So honestly, in this World Cup, we have seen some bangers, and probably the best goals I have ever seen in the women's game. You're seeing shots from outside the box that aren't just loopers that end up over the goalkeeper. They're powerful, they have action, and they are really fun to rewatch. Of the 12 goals that have been scored from outside of the penalty area, remember, one of them is an own goal. Benedetta Orsi of Italy putting the ball in her own net with an errant back pass. There's also one that's an untouched cross by Frances Lialo-Garec. And also don't forget about Katie McCabe's Olympico goal against Canada. The rest are pretty good, and as you'd imagine, most of them are going to end up on top 10 goals lists. You'll see mine in the next video. So we'll wrap up with goals conceded. Now I know there are a ton of other interesting stats, and if you have any cool ones, please share them in the comment section below. So clean sheets, there have been 43 of them so far. Now, one thing to remember, nil-nils quickly double the amount of clean sheets. And there have been 7 of those, which basically accounts for 14 clean sheets. But what's really interesting about the defensive records is that there are 3 teams who have actually yet to concede in this World Cup. Now, the obvious one is Japan, who have been the high-flying goal scorers at the tournament, the only team to get into double digits, but they have also yet to concede a goal. But the other 2 teams may be a little bit of a surprise. The first is Switzerland, who won their first match 2-0 against the Philippines, and then just had 2 0-0 draws to move on to the knockout round. The other is Jamaica. Now, they also had 2 0-0s, but those were against France and Brazil, as opposed to New Zealand and a toothless Norway. Jamaica were able to win their second match against Panama 1-0, and it set them up to have 5 points overall in the group, and they knock out Brazil. It's quite incredible. 1 goal scored, 0 conceded, and you're in the round of 16. That's amazing from Jamaica. So let me double back on Japan real quick because they do have an interesting record. As I said, they were rock solid defensively, have not conceded a goal. They are also the only team to score double-digit goals with 11. And here's a couple things that are interesting about Japan's goals. Number 1, all 11 are from inside the penalty area. And the other thing, they have not scored a single header. That team is going to be a handful in the knockout round. And at present time, they are the best team in the tournament so far. We'll see if they end up with the trophy. As of now, this has been an amazing World Cup. The knockout round is going to be really good. But what a group stage. I mean, it was so much fun. We got to talk about best ofs. That's in the next video. Check it out in a sec. I'm Sebastian North. This is Campfire Football. Enjoy.